Welcome back to the Sign of Good Health podcast. Today I'm with my friend Mike Garinsin. He's a musician. He teaches guitar online with the Art of Guitar channel, and he also is in at least one band that I know about. So the idea for this came from a story he posted on Facebook a while ago. He had a guitar student. She had like 30 songs she had written, and you asked her about it, and it turned out the power had gone out in her house, and she got bored, and this just kind of shot out of her. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about just how technology and schooling and whatever have kind of hampered people's free time and free thought to be able to be creative.
When that happened, it really opened my eyes because I realized how much of my childhood was just trying to fight boredom. Mm-hmm. I felt bored all the time after a while because I just couldn't get stimulated enough. And at the time, we had pretty crappy video games. I had an Atari 2600. And so everything was like playing, this square is shooting this square with a square, you know. But it forced me to look deeper within and actually figure out what I liked. When you do a video game, back when I was younger, you just beat the game and it was done. Nowadays, I'm watching some of these
speedrunners and stuff.
Well, not only that impresses me, but these games that never end.
Oh, yeah.
Like I watched somebody playing this game and they were just like, running across this landscape for hours and hours. And I'm like, is there a point to this game? I think it would take up most of my childhood if I tried to play those things, because I would get way into them. There's no way I wouldn't,
Yeah, and I deliberately avoid phone games because they're like mostly designed to get you addicted, and they're not actually all that fun compared to real video games.
Like Wordle or something?
Yeah.
I keep hearing about Wordle. I don't know what it is. It's like the new Candy Crush or something.
Yeah, it's a word puzzle, but it's kind of like Wheel of Fortune, but it's just like, I think it's 5-letter words.
Okay.
And it's specifically once a day, so it's not going to suck you in as much. And actually all the people at my clinical do it, and they're trying to peer pressure me, but it's like on purpose. The only game I have on my phone is Sudoku.
That actually takes a little bit of like thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure they both do, but Wordle, I had no idea it was one a day.
Oh yeah, so I want to go back to, we were talking about how people are kind of afraid of boredom, any kind of quiet or time without distraction. Like, for example, the second people have to wait in line, the phone's out, or waiting for food at a restaurant, phone. But even like family gatherings, I get shocked that I see we're all sitting at the table on our phones instead of talking to each other.
On my phone. Yeah, totally. When you see when you go to a restaurant and you look and there's a family of 4 and they're all just like looking down, it's an epidemic. I mean, do you find yourself feeling like you want to look at your phone when you're in line?
I deliberately try not to, and because I try to look for those little moments, and just for giving yourself that brainstorming kind of shower thoughts, if you want to call them that.
Yeah.
But it's also, you think about like at a red light and people are freaking on their phones.
Yep.
And whereas I'm just like ready to go. So
I think we're all developing a weird 6th or 7th sense, whatever you believe in, that you could sit in your car, most people, and kind of look down and scroll through whatever, and you sort of can sense when things start moving and the light changes. It's a weird new sense we're all getting. We're also getting bad necks, I think, because we're all looking down so much.
Well, and working in physical therapy, there's a bunch of that, like trying to help people with the...
Oh, yeah, bring your shoulder blades back again. And,
yeah.
That's why I do yoga, just to counter all that stuff.
Don't remember if I talked to you about this ever, but with the autism stuff, I've had to work really hard at learning social skills. And so it's really interesting for me to see people kind of regressing, kind of,
From the norm back in the day. It's weird because you, like you said, you had to go out of your way to develop skills. Now you probably see it more than most people. You see the deterioration of it because you studied it.
Yeah.
And I do too. I notice when I purposely put the phone away and I'm looking around at people, they look at me like I'm strange because I'm not looking at something. And you become the weirdo when you're the one not sucked into your phone. Very strange how that happened. And it seemed to have happened pretty quickly. I think the iPhone came out in 2007 or something like that. And before that, I don't think people were looking at their flip phones for more than 10 seconds at a time.
I mean, they'd text, but then it goes right back in the pocket. So.
That's true. It took longer to text a message because you had to do the 4 pushes letters, and all that stuff. Yeah, but it's weird that it's such a pull. It's such a addictive feeling to like fill up every moment of space you have in your life.
Well, and I wonder if part of why I don't feel that pull is I don't have any social media on my phone.
Oh,
on purpose.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So that's probably a factor. And because I see other people get very sucked into it, and I don't want that for myself. Plus, I'm also the kind of person, like, if I'm working on something, I don't want the interruptions because I try to get to that flow state, you know?
Yeah.
And if you're constantly getting the ping, 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 yeah, it's just going to disrupt that.
When I first started trying to do meditation when I was younger, because I was always interested in weird things like lucid dreaming, and just, I realized that I would sit there for 5 seconds and all of a sudden I feel like, oh, maybe I should go to the bathroom. You know, this is before cell phones. Oh yeah, Conan's on. It's like all these thoughts would just fire into my brain. And for the first few months of trying to meditate, it was just me fighting my thoughts. It was really weird. And then I started realizing that the more I fought, the more they would come.
Yeah, it's kind of that backwards thing.
Yeah, it's like you have to perform mental jujitsu on yourself or something. And so I just watched them, and eventually they just kind of floated away. Like some people say, pretend it's like clouds, and they just pass by through the sky.
And I struggle with that. And I had a friend kind of try to push me to take the cloud method because I've heard that, but I try to deliberately focus on like the sound of a fan. And that's, I use the analogy of, it's kind of like a walkie-talkie. If that's what's transmitting in, I can't go out with my thoughts.
I gotcha. Yep.
So it's a little different, and it seems to work for me, but I don't know if that cloud thing is like a higher level of meditation or what, or if it's just a different style.
At the end, I'm finding that the best one for me is just to sit there in silence. Like I used to try to do mantras.
Yeah.
And I even did a candle focus one where you just stare at a candle. And that's surprisingly difficult as well. At least the candle is flickering and stuff, and it gives your mind a little stimulation. But to just stare at an inanimate object for half hour at a time and see if your brain can just handle it. And then you get through it, you feel this calm hit you after maybe 10 minutes. And I can't explain it, but it's like when things shut down, like a kind of feeling like a robot shutting down. That's what it feels like my brain does. And all of a sudden I have a different level of awareness, and I hear like the cars outside. I'm feeling the air in my skin, and I'm like, wow, this is always available to me. And I start feeling vibrations in my body and stuff. Remind me to tell you about the vibrations in the body thing. It kind of ties into some more stuff, but that's when I realized that there's like a 0 point you can hit, and it's rare that we get there during the day because there's so much static in the air. You know?
Yeah. Well, and when I was in Granite Falls, I would sit and just stare at the river. And when you mentioned the candle, what I have had success with, so like water, sometimes just like nature, landscape, whatever,
That's nice.
Or like a bonfire.
Yep.
Those I'm able to just kind of sit there and just, and that's the part I like about fishing. I don't really care about like
actually catching the fish.
Yeah,
and
I just like
stuff,
the serenity.
A lot of people, that's why they go hunting. That's why they do a lot of things. Is for the serenity, for sure. Golfing. I'm kind of feeling that now because I'm just recently gotten back into archery. When I was a kid, my dad bought us a bow and arrow and just went to work and said, have fun. It was a different time. But they were building homes around our house, and they were big dirt mounds. So we would just put up like cardboard boxes and shoot them. And there's that moment when you're aiming it where, all the thoughts leave your head, and you're like, here's another version of meditation. It's in everything. Yeah. But you almost have to find that 0 point once again.
Well, and I know the Zen and the Art of Archery book is supposed to be really good and popular for that.
Motorcycle maintenance.
Yeah, that's the other one.
You could write one on almost anything. And you find anyone who's a master at their craft, let's say you repair vacuum cleaners. There's that flow state that you mentioned earlier where you just know what you're doing. And when you see a master working, you're like, it's just a combination of repetition, but also a challenge at the same time, kind of forces you. Yeah. Have you ever read the book Flow before?
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of that reminded me of that idea that it has to have a little bit of a challenge too. So.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we both do jujitsu too. And there's that kind of, you do something and you're like, what the hell did I do? Because your body just kind of knows what to do, even if it's a weird situation. You know.
Remember the first time we sparred? I walk in and it's like I'm always on the comeback trail. It's like my whole jiu-jitsu journey is me trying to come back from not going.
Yeah.
But I went and all of a sudden I'm like, who are these new people? You know, and it was you, Jody was there, I think, maybe Jesse. And we were going to spar, kickbox a little bit. Yep. And there's tons of people watching because I think Jody was telling people or Jesse that I used to be pretty good at kicking or whatever. First thing that happens is you kick me in the head. You remember that?
I remember that.
And I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't block it in time, and I think you hit the top of my hand into my face, and I was just like, oh.
Oh, okay.
And it was the second most embarrassing thing that ever happened in martial arts. One time I was a kid, I was 10, and I was holding a pad for this kid, and he was new. So I figured this kid's not going to know how to kick. Turns out he's freaking like Joe Rogan. He does a spinning back kick, and I go flying, falling right on my ass. Next thing I knew, I'm looking at the ceiling, and the parents who were sitting down watching were just trying to not laugh. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. So I had that same feeling of embarrassment. But
Yeah.
you kicked me into awareness because I
Yeah,
was being
'cause
very
after
lazy.
that, I remember, you were kind of slow to start out, and then it was just wham, and then then it was like a normal session.
Yeah,
so.
it's like, oh, I'm back in this now. It's been
Yep.
years, but
Well, and I've had probably a similar pattern to you where when I've moved to Granite Falls and now Rochester, I am not able to do jiu-jitsu for a variety of reasons. I felt like I retained some like core techniques, and then it's all the more advanced stuff and but you still keep that muscle memory and it comes back, and then it takes like, I'll say a month or two, I don't know specifically, but
sounds about right.
it'll come back over
Yeah.
time. So I'm actually looking into working on this summer with tricking, like the flashy kicks and cartwheels and
Oh,
stuff. And that's just because with wanting to do action movies, that stuff looks a lot better than and unfortunately the practical jiu-jitsu stuff isn't
Yeah.
really sexy on camera.
you got to do like, what's that stuff called? Capoeira?
Capoeira. And that's kind of its own thing. It does look cool. There's the Compasso kick that I can do.
Is that where you spin backwards and do the hook kick from
Yeah.
below? That's deadly, man. All of a sudden, they're spinning and that freaking heel's coming towards your temple. It's not pretty.
So I guess we can transition back to creativity with, let's just say it like a hypothetical. You've got like a non-creative job, and we'll get to jobs later, but you haven't done a project like a video or whatever for a while. What's your experience been with getting the creativity muscles back?
You know that feeling, like you said, where you're just doing jujitsu and your body's taken over?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had trouble getting the creative flow happening for about 2.5 years straight now. Because my life, ever since my YouTube channel took off, has been about the next video and what excites me to want to show people.
Yeah.
And I started meditating, coincidentally or not, at around the same time because I
Sure.
was feeling really kind of apprehensive about not teaching private lessons anymore. Because my old life used to be 6 days a week. I taught 10 to 12 people back to back to back. And it's crazy because each student is a half hour. You're face-to-face talking, usually talking and teaching. A lot of my students thought of it as like therapy. So doing a lot of talking and relating and stuff. After that went away, coincided with my YouTube channel growing, all of a sudden my brain knew that that was its new job.
Mm-hmm.
And so with meditation, I would sit there and just close my eyes and breathe. And all of a sudden, boom, it was like it was given to me, some idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so nowadays I just wake up, I come here, I put down a video idea, and bam, another one hits me.
I remember a video you did about, I think it was Brown Eyed Girl, and you're like, oh, it's easy, it's a 3-chord thing, and then you talk about how it's actually a really advanced thing, and
Levels.
yeah.
Yep. I have a student named Dylan, and he's been with me for a long time. And he used to play bass for the little band that I put together for the students.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really a guitar player, but I remember he's like, I'll just play bass so we can be in a band or whatever together. And I go, okay, which songs do you need help on? And I go, Brown Eyed Girl. He goes, no, that's easy. Next. I go, oh, it's easy? I thought of it as like a teaching moment.
Yeah.
The inner teacher in me had to kind of be a jerk, but I'm like, show it to me then. And so he whips out the acoustic, even though he's going to be playing bass, but he just plays 3 chords and goes, there you go, that's the song. And I go, but that's like the first layer of the song.
Yeah.
Can you go one level deeper? And he goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because to him, it's just G, C, G, D, the whole song pretty much. And then I go, let's listen to it really quick. And I played the intro, and he's like, oh, yeah, there's a lot more to it. So that's kind of like martial arts, too. Like somebody sees you do a effortless roundhouse kick like you did to my head that one time, and they think it's just, oh, he just lifts his leg and kicks, but how many repetitions have you done to get there? So when you teach, you break things down, and I think that's why when people start teaching jiu-jitsu, they get really good at it, because all of a sudden you see it more like a blueprint.
Yeah.
And there's a hierarchy of this first, then this, and this is more important if you do this. Same with guitar. And so, yeah, that was a huge awakening to me that people actually love learning about the inner workings of music, not just, hey, this is the 3 chords, have fun.
Yeah. So the next stuff I wanted to talk about, I think I actually got it because you recommended it. It's the book If You Want to Write.
Ooh, Brenda
So-
Yulin?
Yeah, yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so I just wrote down some of the good talking points. Like one I really liked was write with real honesty. So if you want to give your thoughts on that.
That's like what I try to put into my videos. It's funny because early on when I had maybe less than 1,000 subscribers, I would get people calling me out all the time. not realizing I had been doing it for 25 years before it's funny, people go, oh, you're just a stupid YouTuber in his basement or something like that. And I go, okay, that's one way to look at it, but if you don't know my whole history, you don't know that everything I put into my videos is from direct experience. So there are YouTubers that never touched a stage in their lives. They've never had to face the idea of waking up in a tour van with their bass player's butt in their face, like I have. And it's like all those visceral experiences culminate into what I do now. And I feel like there's a sense of honesty. Even when I do my live streams, I'm not, hey, everyone, today we're, I'm not putting on a front for anybody. I wouldn't do it if I had to do that.
Yeah.
And it's a big reason why I don't do ads on my videos. A lot of people, I'm not saying that if you do ads, it's bad, because people have to make a living. Luckily, I have a side website where I teach and people subscribe to that, so I don't have to do that stuff on my channel. But I can always tell they go into their fake mode usually. Some people are masters of doing it seamlessly, but I feel like I couldn't do it without sounding like I was faking it. What I mean? People can perceive if you're not being real, and then they have other channels to go to. I'm not trying to put up a front.
So let's talk about the excuse of like, I don't have time, and we can say /energy.
Yeah. So I used to have normal jobs. I worked overnights at gas stations. And I remember, because this is how low I was. Not that working at a gas station is bad, but for me, it was hell. I was so bad off that I remember seeing the newspaper guy come in at 2 a.m. every night or whatever and bring the next day's papers. And I was so desperate to get a better job. I'm like, how much do they pay you to deliver newspapers? And so basically I was delivering. I went from that to that. And when I got back home, here's where I did the opposite of what I think a lot of people would do. Instead of saying I didn't have any energy, I was so depressed because I hated what I was doing all day that it's like I had no choice but to try to make music.
To get yourself out
raft.
of there.
Yeah. And what's funny is it started off as a life raft. I jumped to it when I started teaching, and then it grew into this giant cruise ship for me. And it hasn't stopped ever since. But one thing I'll say is the common denominator of everyone I've talked to that has ever done what they wanted for a job is they all took that one leap of faith.
Yeah.
And that one hesitation to not jump is usually what keeps people stuck in whatever they don't want to do. Because it's so easy to just think of all the things that go wrong or whatever. And for me, I was so desperate, I had to jump.
Interesting, because I'm thinking about like, and I've heard this from like, I think it was Mike Cernovich. He talked about like with success stories. So, and I'll bring this up too. There's the stereotypes of the artists, musicians, actors, whatever, working like as waiters and whatever bullshit jobs
The day job.
until some project takes off. And it's interesting you talk about the leap of faith, because what Mike Cernovich was talking about is you only hear the success stories of that. And it's like, there's more people that want to take that creative path than make it. And it's, I want to say, he said it was like 90% but you don't know, because nobody wants to, it's a shameful thing if you feel like you failed.
Yep.
You know
how many people I know say they're writers? And it's like, there's that old saying, writers write.
Yeah.
And I think the reason people say writers is because they can actually write. You can get on a computer and just start typing. You can shorthand it or whatever, longhand it. I don't know what the difference is. But when it comes down to it, it's easy to think of yourself as like a frustrated writer than to actually face the blank page.
Yeah, I've heard that thing.
Yeah. So I recommend, if you feel stuck, that Brenda Euland, especially the audiobook, there's one in particular where, do you have the audiobook or the actual book?
The audiobook.
Does it sound like kind of a ratty older lady talking?
Yeah,
there's something about her voice. It's like a wise grandma talking to you.
Yep.
She's like, everyone's creative. It's just I see it die in people, and then they, wither away. And I'm like, this book needs to be heard. I mean, why aren't we learning this stuff?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to find it in hidden channels, like weird podcasts.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing I was going to bring up was that I thought of on the drive here. There's that study that looked at like kindergarten, like I want to say 90-something% of the kids had genius level creativity. And then like, I'll say first grade, it dropped by like 40%. And then by the time you get to 12th grade, it's like 5%. And those numbers are off. So the commenters will correct me, but you get the idea. One of my favorite interviews I did was with Dave Burgess, and he wrote Teach Like a Pirate. And it's a book about helping teachers realize how to integrate different modes of learning and making the lessons fun and engaging instead of just standing up at the top of the room lecturing and reading from a book.
Yep.
And he has a TED Talk, so we can put a link to that.
That's where I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to his presentation, and he said every time he does this, he has teachers, and he says, I know there's teachers in this room thinking, it's easy for you, you're creative. And it's like, so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, like, is everybody creative, or are some people more suited for it? Or
I've tried to strive to be a flexible teacher to be able to get people to learn their way, because I had this math teacher. I swear to God, his name was Mr. Haight. Haight. I don't know if he's still with us, but I went up to ask him for help. And he was so logical. It was like talking to Spock. I'd be like, I don't really understand this thing. He goes, what don't you understand? I'd be like, I just don't get how you got that number. He's like, it's right there on the paper. It's staring you in the face. It's like he couldn't see outside of his own bubble.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to be the opposite of that. And whenever I had a student who looked bored or they hated, playing jingle bells,
chords or whatever.
Yeah, or just the basic stuff you kind of have to learn in the beginning. I found more creative ways to make them like it, but it does take energy, and I can see why a lot of school teachers. I have a student actually who's a school teacher, and he's become jaded over the years because he started off like they all do, excited about helping the next generation, all that stuff. And after about 3 years, especially these days, they're just like ground down to nothing.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? I try to do something, and then the administration yells at me, and then a parent finds out that I did something, outside of the norm, and they get mad at me. So I feel like even if you are creative and you're a teacher, if you're not in the right school, good luck.
So in 9th grade in the science class, there was a contest for paper airplanes, and
Whose goes the farthest?
Yeah, well, not quite.
Okay.
There were different categories where you could, if you won certain categories, you would get extra credit on like the next quiz or whatever. So most people were going for longest distance, but one of the categories was like longest time in the air. So I talked to my partner and I was like, let's just tank the distance thing and make something like a hot air balloon with a bunch of plastic bags as a parachute.
Nice.
And it didn't work. But our teacher didn't punish us. She gave us a good grade for thinking outside the box.
Good for her.
So that stands out to me. Mrs. Schrader. Sorry, I can't remember.
It sucks
her
when
name.
you forget your teachers' names, but I do all the time.
So anyway, that story stands out to me because it's very antithetical to what you'd normally expect to happen in school. Like, oh, your project failed, and you.
Yep. So I think creativity is going to be the last thing that we have as humans to hold on to when the AI take over all the mechanical stuff.
Right.
And that's a whole other topic, but I see that happening.
I was going to have us talk about that.
I thought my job was over when Rocksmith came out and Guitar Hero 4 or whatever, and we were learning guitar with the thing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, AI has claimed my job, and then luckily it hasn't. But that freaked me out for a while.
And we'll come back to the AI thing. I think her name is Jessica McCabe. Her YouTube channel is How to ADHD, and I just found her like a couple days ago.
I did too.
Okay.
It's funny. She's quirky. I like her.
Yeah. So she has one about creativity with ADHD, and I did a different podcast about how there's a lot of overlap between ADHD and autism. So, because I was looking into if I had it, and I was like, maybe, but anyway, different topic. So she talked about creativity is not just being good at painting, sculpting, drawing. It's also problem solving, divergent thinking, novel ideas, and then she does like Jessica's script. So anyway. So one other thing with the making money and creativity. So one thing that kind of is hard about it, like a harsh reality, is it's hard to make money creatively unless you're in like the top 1%. And these statistics are wrong, but it's the principle of what I'm saying. I think it's like 20 musicians make like 95% of the money or something like that. And
it's all Jay-Z.
Yeah. And then like there's an article I read. This is pre-pandemic, so people see about 6 movies a year, and Disney's strategy was to try to monopolize all 6 slots of those.
And they're winning.
Yeah.
It's all Marvel, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like Marvel, Star Wars, animated kids movies, and I don't remember what the other ones were, but that's their strategy, is to try to take up all 6 slots.
Wow.
And it's like, they're flexing at this point because they're buying everything.
Yep. Aren't they buying entire theaters now? Like
I think so.
Marvel
And
theater.
there's the danger of only Disney films are going to only certain things. And I mean, I'm sure movie theaters have been getting shafted with like they need to pay 80% of the money back to the studios just to show the movie there. And
the one down the road, I just did a post of it yesterday. It's
the
an entire
AMC closed.
Open,
Yep,
it's a
gutted.
warehouse now. I just walk in, it's just empty. Nowadays, though, it's kind of good because think of the reach the smaller filmmaker must have compared to before. And plus, not even that, you can make a whole movie with an iPhone, you know?
Yeah, like the what do they call it? The barriers to entry are a lot lower. And like I'm assuming you've heard about the 1,000 true fans thing.
Oh, that's all you need is like a small group.
Yeah, you don't need the world. You just need 1,000 true fans to
Makes sense.
make a living or whatever.
That's why all these podcasters can quit their jobs and just do that all the time.
Yep.
Because they have their solid crew. Yeah. Here's how I got to any success in my life as far as being able to do it as for a living is I remember many occasions where I wanted to cry and quit. I even put out a video called The Time I Cried After a Gig because I was up there playing and then I sucked. And the band right after one of my friends came up and just shredded. And I went home and I remember I was on a rocking chair. I must have looked like a crazy person and the tears were rolling down. I'm like, maybe I'll just play rhythm guitar, not lead guitar.
Yeah.
Not that that's any easier, but I thought it was back then. All those painful moments make me appreciate what I do now. And it got to the point where I just felt gratitude because of the trials that it took.
So like asking out girls, a bad gig, whatever, or do you still do this with like just kind of beating yourself up? Oh, it's so stupid back then.
But now that I look back, I go, yeah, that was really cringy and embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment where I learned an entire song on a keyboard intro. It was Long Time by Boston.
Yep.
It's got this diddle diddle diddle. I learned the whole thing note for note, and I practiced it for 6 months straight. Played it live, and right before we were going to go live, I hear my singer next to the guy playing pool, and she's like, hey, watch this. It's super crazy. So I felt both of their eyes on me from
pressure,
the side.
Yep.
And all of a sudden my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was like, and I screwed up so bad I had to apologize. I stopped the song. I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have to try that again. Sorry about that. It got through it somehow. The band helped me out. They kicked in early or whatever. And to this day, when I think of it, it has the potential of making me want to fall to the floor in embarrassment. But I think about it, I'm like, you know what? After that gig, playing it after that seemed easy.
Yeah.
And I love that concept of doing the hardest thing you can so that anything underneath it seems really simple.
Another quote from the If You Want to Write. So becoming a better writer involves becoming a better person. And she talks about how you need to be physically fit, smart, brave, able to fight, honorable. A weasel won't be able to write anything good. People see through it.
I think nowadays, though, you have to alter that statement a little bit to you'll find your crowd no matter what.
Yeah.
There's people out there that might be into self-mutilation and they're going to have their little following now that the internet exists. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I feel like if you want to sleep at night, you want to have some integrity with yourself, which I think spawns better work.
Yeah.
I used to be a little bit more romantic about drinking and writing or going to dark places sometimes. And I'm like, it's okay to visit those areas, but you have to come back with something. You can't just stew in it the rest of your life.
Sure. She talked about the only people that write, and it's actually what you were saying, the only people who write easily are super shallow. There's no truth in there. Cliche literary wording and phrasing. And then this kind of goes into the country music stuff I wanted to talk about.
Sure.
So last year I got into country music, and I'm also reading a book very slowly called Writing Better Lyrics. And I listened to some songs. So there's a song that just sounds very vanilla and lazy. So the song Last Single Saturday Night is catchy and I liked it at first, but then I was looking at the lyrics and it's like 3rd grade level rhyming. So if your first verse is like 8 lines and your second verse is like 2, in my mind, your song's not done yet. It's lazy.
Half-baked, yeah. I
Yeah.
hear you. It's like they just had that money chorus. They just wanted to get back to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one is just not having, I think it's called a bridge. You just do the chorus again, but a cappella.
Yep.
And it's like, some songs, they do that and it works, but I see it as it can be done poorly if the rest of your song is also crap. And it's like, I like the song and it's catchy, but the writing is not there.
That's the hard part of music. It's so subjective. For
Yeah.
example, this is when I had my heart torn out of my ass,
Mm-hmm.
is when I worked my ass off to do really good work, and my friends did, and we put in a lot of time. And then you hear a really shitty band, I mean, subjectively shitty to me,
Yeah.
who just hit like play on a keyboard or on a loop station, whatever they did,
Yeah.
and played 2 chords and just mumble rapped over the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
You see them play that for an audience, and everyone's going crazy. And you're just sitting there. Like, we were in a band one time who we practiced all the time. We were pretty good musicians as a group. We would play, and everybody would just sit and drink. And then we'd get done, and the DJ guy would play party music that was just like a the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody went nuts and started dancing. I'm like, why are we even here?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as much as I agree with you, I love it when I grew up. Well, I did love Kiss, but Kiss has their deep moments as well. But like the Beatles, you start listening to bands that put a lot of energy into the writing process, and it's a craft.
Yeah.
And then you also see people that barely do anything, and they get a lot of accolades these days.
Yeah.
I finally had to just let it go and go, you know what? That's just the way of the world.
Yep.
There's going to be an audience for everything these days. And I just had to come to peace with that. Because you're going to go crazy if you want everyone in the world to only like grand novels, let's say. Instead
Yeah.
of
Well, and it's the
Twilight
same kind of
books.
thing with like we were saying with superheroes, or if everyone's creative, then it doesn't mean anything. So it's just different. Like I like what you're saying, just different styles of songs.
Yep. Like they say, it takes all kinds to make a world.
Yep.
And if you don't accept that and you want imagine a world where everyone just likes what you like. You'd never get tickets to your favorite concert.
Yeah. There has to be shitty songs, and that's subjective and whatever, but there has to be shitty songs to also have like all the ones everyone knows. So
Sometimes you feel like, is it worth even going deep on things? But if it's your drive and it's your obsession, you'll do it automatically.
Yeah.
And the accolades or whatever may come or they may not, but at least when they do come, that'll be authentic.
yeah.
You never want a whole bunch of fake followers. That's one of the worst feelings.
With filmmaking, and I'm assuming music is similar, make the kind of movies you'd want to watch or see.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would like to listen to the podcast with depth and stuff and going deep on a topic. And that's
Isn't that
what
weird
we're
how that
doing.
works? You just have
Yeah.
to do what you would like, and other
Yeah.
people probably will like it as well.
Yeah. Because on like one of those paradoxes is like, you're not as unique as you think, even though you are. You know?
I'm not a snowflake? Damn it.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Were you
And
still in that generation?
I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm the generation that can make fun of them, though.
Okay.
But now it's funny because the next generation after them, even the snowflake people are like, oh my God, the world's going to end. It's just like no matter what generation, the next one's always worse, you think, you know?
Yeah.
It's weird. I think the world is getting better. It's
Yeah.
just we go through a lot of adjustment periods because we test the boundaries. Like the first time I ever have my youngest students start piano lessons sometimes, the first thing they do on the piano, can you guess what it is?
Chopsticks
No.
or just
That's what adults do when they
Oh.
sit at the piano.
posture?
Nope. They could care less about posture.
Okay.
The small kids, the ones that are just starting out like 6 years old, the first thing they do
Married
is
a little lamb.
they hit the lowest key
Oh,
and they
yeah.
hit the highest key. It was so amazing to see that because I'm like, they're testing the boundaries. They need to know
The range.
where
yeah.
the middle is, and where the range is, and then they play. They don't just go, oh, boop, and they're done. It's just like, nope, what's my lowest point? And that's why when I thought about parenting, how people say kids need to know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
Yep.
When those boundaries aren't there, I think people grow up in a wild way, and it's not always good.
Yeah, well, and it kind of also relates to that when I was telling the story about the airplanes and experimentation and not punishing failure or trying something.
Do you also, though, could you go too far out?
Probably. Like if it was just like I made a race car or something.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it went further because it rolled. It's like,
Strangely, you might be the one that's the most successful, though, because you were really thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's a range where it's too much or it's too little.
Right.
'Cause I would not want to be so strict.
yeah.
You have to know these boundaries. I don't want to be that guy, but I also don't want to be like, do whatever you want. Who cares?
It's like I think it was in How I Met Your Mother or something. It's like sooner or later in life, you're going to find out that there's a rule that you're the reason for.
Wow.
Or like-
I thought about that the other day when I was trying my new bow out. was like, all these weird rules you find out, restrictions. Somebody poked their eye out because of that, or in order to create that rule.
Yeah, like do not insert rectally or whatever.
Yes. That should be on every object, right?
Well,
why isn't it?
I have some friends. I think it was a friend of mine in Michigan. Her mom was a nurse, and at her hospital, they have the Golden Cucumber Award for who pulls out the weirdest thing out of someone's butt.
I heard a story where somebody they tried a light bulb and it broke inside of them.
Yep.
Ugh. I'm not that brave. I'm sorry.
What are your thoughts about, because you talked about the different mentalities and approaches, so what are your thoughts about the picking the right kind of project or discipline?
To make your life?
But like I'll just say, not even like just doing creative stuff, like how do you pick the right stuff? Like I'm kind of narrowed in, like I know video is a good medium for me and I like writing, but I want to turn that into a video. And I can draw, but I don't really like taking the time to do it. And like animation, I know you're trying to get into that.
Tried 7 times now. I just give up after the first project.
Yeah.
So
like
tedious.
I, again, can do it. It works for certain projects, but it wouldn't be my main thing.
Yeah.
So.
I think it calls you, but you do sometimes have to dabble at first. Like right now I'm in a dabbling mode. Like I said, I have more time and space in my brain now to try things. So I'm trying to learn Chinese because I think they're going to take over everything. So I might as well know a few.
Get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, how do I say spare my life?
Yeah.
I've always been on your side. No, I'm just kidding. And then I dabble, but some things stick, some things don't. And when guitar hit me, it stuck so hard that I could not do it. I know it sounds generic.
Yeah.
But when I found myself at school bringing guitar magazines, obsessing, I knew I either had mental problems because it's all I could think about was that one thing, or it was some weird calling. But it had to come into my life somehow. I mean, my best friend started guitar lessons and my brother ended up buying a guitar around the same time. So I think it was this weird hint. Life is just like, take the guitar and run with it.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't have dabbled on it at first, I would have never found out that I was addicted to it.
Yeah.
So I think dabbling at first is...
Well, it's an important part of the process because you're going to, like you said, and it's I know it frustrates parents with like, bought him this expensive guitar and he played it and he's bouncing off. But it's like, you need to go through that to at least try something.
Yep. And you might come back to it later. I've had people, like when I was a kid, this is kind of a sad story, but my dad bought me an acoustic guitar for Christmas. And it was kind of a cheaper one. And I let it sit in the corner of my room. I was about 9 years old. Stayed in the corner of my room for 2 years, and one day I came home from school, and it was shattered into a million pieces all around my bedroom. My dad had a bad temper. He walked in my room and, like, pulled a Paul Stanley. And maybe that triggered me to want...
Yeah, now that you can't have it.
Yeah, and I was pissed. It's like, even though I didn't play that thing, I'm mad that my room looks like a hamster cage right now. I don't know if that fueled me at all, but... the guitar just sat in the corner. It's, I never put it to use. And then later on, like 2 years after that, I picked up another guitar and I learned, and it's been my life ever since. But dabbling, I think, is good for some people. But you also need space in your life. Sometimes boredom.
Well, I was going to ask you, with the guitar and you're 9 years old, it's kind of different than an adult being like, I'll get around to that someday, or was that what it was for you? Or is it just what?
I was too busy throwing a tennis ball against my garage door because I wanted to be the next Frank Viola pitcher for the Twins.
Okay.
And so every day for summer vacation, one of my favorite memories was the Nintendo system had just come out, and I was playing that.
Is this NES?
NES, I'd do Major League Baseball. My friend would come over, and we would play that. Then we'd go outside, and I would pitch a tennis ball, and I was trying to hit a specific part of my garage door every time. So I probably threw 1,000 pitches every day, which led to me becoming a decent pitcher in Little League. My friend, luckily, was already into baseball, and we had this really ratty bat that was broken in half. So it wasn't even a full bat; it was broken. And we would take turns batting and trying to hit the tennis ball over the street into the neighbor's fence, which luckily we could get over to retrieve the ball. And so that became my obsession. I was so obsessed with sports, and I would collect not even baseball cards; they had stickers, and you'd put them in this stupid book. And then, so the guitar just sat there, and it didn't call me, even though when I was a kid, like even younger, my cousin got me into the band Kiss. And I used to just draw pictures of Kiss, and he and I would put on fake concerts in the living room and jump off the couch and air guitar to Kiss Alive. And so it was really weird how that was a seed that was planted early.
Right.
It got delayed, and now it's picked up steam to the point where I do it for a living. So
yeah, and we talked earlier about just the thing will find you at the right time.
hopefully, unless you're
Yeah.
distracting yourself all the time.
Yeah.
What if I had what I do sometimes? I got way into VR for a little while. I was doing like table tennis at night. Like I'm playing a guy from China at 3 a.m. This is great. I got so into it, I knocked my lamp over and it shattered into a million pieces. I have trouble with things like that. But if I had that when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I may never even thought, oh, I'm going to play this stupid piece of wood sitting there. You know?
Right.
So I'm very lucky things were lame back then.
Yeah, well, and we started with talking about like the social media and electricity and internet, and it's like all the distractions. So we planned this. It came full circle.
Yes.
We know we're professionals. We're actually getting down to it. I got a couple more questions. So
I feel like Johnny Depp right now. I'm on trial here. It never ends.
yeah. So
No, I love it.
the last stuff I want to talk about is just kind of talk about and we can go into mine too, just kind of creative, your creative brainstorming process, whatever. Maybe a good one would be, how has it changed over time? Like, what have you learned that's effective to get into the zone? Like that kind of stuff.
Well, I have this embarrassing 10-year drought that I talk about sometimes. Talk about putting yourself behind the 8 ball. I would hold my guitar. I'd write a chord progression. Right away, my brain would go, that's not as good as Blackbird by the Beatles.
Yeah.
How could you get anywhere? That's like your first day of jiu-jitsu comparing yourself to Hicks and Gracie.
Yep.
It's like, no wonder why I had a 10-year period where I didn't write anything. Because anything I put out there, I'd compare it to the Beatles or the Stones or any Metallica, anybody, and I'd be like, oh, that's not going to hold up if it's not as good as their stuff. So I was already setting myself up for failure. Nowadays, what I do is even if I get a goofy idea and I think it's just going to fall flat, if I'm excited by it, I'll just follow through with it no matter what. There have been many nights where I watch the video 6 times and I go, do I upload it? And I just decide not to, but I chalk it up as a good lesson.
Yeah.
And then I go home, and before I go to bed, I try to meditate for 20 minutes. And it's weird how my brain, back in the old days when you had computer hard drives, you had to defragment them. Do you remember that?
I didn't have to, but I know what it means.
It would take a while, but it was a utility program you would use, and it would take all these bits. They would show a visual representation of it. And I felt like all the bits that were all scattered, that's my brain typically. When I meditate, it would take all the bits and put them in the corner, would consolidate them, and I would have all this other room for creative thoughts to flow through. Meditation does that for me, and I did it so much that even if I took a week off of meditating, it was like momentum had built up. And I just keep getting ideas. They just keep coming to me. Sometimes I freak out because I'm like, I try not to watch other guitar YouTubers' channels because I don't want to steal their ideas on accident. And sometimes that happens. You just can't help it.
Yeah.
But it's weird how I keep getting an influx of ideas without even trying. It's like I'm hooked up to some internet in my brain from some creative source. Whatever it is, thank you.
Well, have you read the War of Art?
Yep.
Yeah. It's just the Muse or whatever.
The Muse has been good to me lately. I think it's because I keep visiting her.
Mark Manson, we keep going back to him too. In The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Yeah, we
Did he start the trend where everybody was doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I know you posted about noticing that, and Mark Manson was the first guy.
Okay.
So now you know.
Wow.
But anyway, in that book, there's a thing that he talks about. Is it James something, the guy who made Megadeth?
Dave Mustaine?
Sure. I don't know.
He got kicked out of Metallica.
Yes, that guy. So he wrote about how, and it's like what you're saying, he wrote about how he got kicked out of Metallica and he wanted to make the best metal band ever, and Megadeth sold like 100 million albums or whatever, but it wasn't as many as Metallica, so he was really depressed.
Classic villain story. Yep.
Yeah.
Is that amazing that actually fleshed out in a real situation like that? He is kind of like if you watch his early interviews, he's very vindictive and he's kind of like, "Oh, I'm going to get you guys," you know. And he was way into crazy substances back then. So he admits now, I mean, there was a video of him talking to Lars, the drummer for Metallica, and they both cried. It was really kind of a cool moment to see two metal gods crying with each other. But that was amazing to see that because you're like, deep down, sometimes
it's that human,
very human
authenticity stuff.
That angry little kid that gets kicked off the team. I'll show you. I'll be in the freaking NFL or something like that. And sometimes they succeed, but they're running on
the wrong
intense
inspiration.
Fuel. Yeah, it's like the fire will burn you.
I was that angry kid, and I grew out of it in the mid-college. So
how much of that anger was frustration at like just not being where you wanted to be?
Well, some of it was also with autism and just not understanding the world and getting kind of shit on with the school. With like, I got suspended for fighting back when kids were physically assaulting me.
Same old story.
And it's like, what do you want? They wanted me to just run away. It's like, how does that work?
I hate that because it teaches you to be a victim.
Yeah.
To use that word, but you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'll take the lickings. I'll follow what the Bible says and turn the other cheek. I'm like, I don't think that's really what it means, you know?
Yeah. Mike is with the Art of Guitar, and I don't know your other website.
Is this self-serving or what? It's theartofguitar.com with slashes in between because some jerk bought out the address. So.
But he's got a YouTube channel. He's got his own website. He does. Do you still teach?
A handful of people, just privately.
Selective, yeah. And comment below if you want us to talk about Black Mirror, drinking, songs, cliches, and stuff.
Or should we be drinking while we do some of these?
Yeah, well, and I'm very much a lightweight, so
I probably am now too.
Let's talk about this thing. And so anyway, thanks for being on the show, and
no problem.
It was a lot of fun.
I feel like I interviewed you half the time, so thanks for fielding my question.
Yeah.